Begin with our top story coming out of the U.S. President Donald Trump has unveiled his Middle East peace plan, calling for two states with the Palestinian capital in parts of East Jerusalem. The proposal also calls for the recognition of illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank in exchange for a 4-year ban on new settlements.
After 2 years of discussion, the US president unveiled his long-awaited Middle East plan with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Trump's self-proclaimed deal of the century has eschewed global consensus on the Palestinian conflict. Among other pro-Israeli tilts, the plan denies Palestinian refugees their right of return. But Trump claims otherwise.
My vision presents a win-win opportunity for both sides. A realistic two-state solution that resolves the risk of Palestinian statehood to Israel's security.
Palestinians have rejected the plan as a political circus. President Mahmoud Abbas called it a conspiracy.
I say to the partners Trump and Netanyahu, Jerusalem is not for sale. All our rights are not for sale and are not for bargain. And your deal, the conspiracy, will not pass.
Rejecting the plan, Hamas officials said they won't accept any substitute for Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state. Thousands of Palestinians protested in the Gaza Strip after the plan was unveiled, chanting slogans against Israel and the US.
Meanwhile, the UN says it is committed to helping Palestine and Israel end their conflict with the two-state solution that uses pre-1967 borders. In a statement, Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the UN stands by relevant Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. The statement came after U.S. President Trump's new Middle East plan ignored the international consensus on the conflict. The deal calls for the legitimization of Jewish settlements long regarded as illegal under UN resolutions and denies Palestinian refugees their right of return. In January 2017, a UN Security Council resolution was adopted a month before Donald Trump became U.S. president. The resolution demanded an end to illegal Israeli settlements, with 14 votes in favor and 1 abstention. Well, the Arab League has called for an emergency meeting, on Saturday in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan. The League's Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghaid says a first reading of the plan suggests Palestinians' legitimate rights will be slashed. Well, for more on that now, we're joined by Moeen.
American plan and is open to serious efforts to achieve peace. In the meantime, the Muslim world's response to the Trump plan has been mixed. Iran, Turkey and Jordan have categorically rejected the plan, calling it flawed and dead on arrival. Pakistan called for a viable and independent Palestine within the pre-1967 borders. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has called the deal of the century a nightmare for the region. Ankara calls Trump's plan a dead deal, while Jordan says long-lasting peace can only come from the UN's 1967 border plan. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar and the UAE have all voiced their support for the scheme.
Let's discuss this further now with Moeen Naeem, who is an analyst. He's joining us now from Istanbul. Moeen, we appreciate your time here at Indus News. Now, President Trump, Moeen, has finally unveiled the peace plan that he calls the deal of the century, with two states and a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem. What options do you think Palestinians have to counter what already looks like a fait accompli?
In fact, unfortunately, it's first of all, we can't say it's a peace plan. It's just a war declaration against the Palestinian rights and Palestinians themselves. Unfortunately, the international and regional conditions is not on behalf on the right of Palestinians or Palestinian cause, but it's normal in this condition for the revolutions and freedom revolutions to be like this. We didn't see all over the history that the revolutionary people are supported by all the world. It's always the strong occupation forces and mandates are always against the Palestinian, the revolutionary and revolutions in the world. For this condition, today we are living in an era where the rights and rules are not recognized. Only power and injustice is in power now. So I believe this is, first of all, to say this is a promise of the ones who don't have or who don't own to the ones who don't deserve. Trump yesterday was just giving the Palestinian land, the Palestinian rights, as if it is his own property to the occupation, with no, regardless the international law, the international agreements, and even the United Nations decisions. So that's what's happening now, and we are unfortunately, as Palestinian people, facing not only the Israeli occupation. Now we are facing the Israeli occupation and the American aggressive government.
Moeen, what options does Palestine have right now?
In fact, we had the same options that we had before we have today. We have no much options, but we have no right to surrender. We have to fight against occupation. We have to fight to get back our rights. In the world, we believe that people and communities are very clearly knows the right thing. So we have, first of all, to continue fighting against the occupation, fighting against the occupation diplomatically and even on the land, and shout again this type of unjust declarations. And we are praying now for Trump to lose his war against the rights of Palestinians in this era, because we believe that Trump and Netanyahu are announcing this type of agreement, let's say, not to solve the Palestinian issue, but only to save themselves from being taken down by the law in their countries or organizations.
Very well, Moeen, we'll leave it there at that, but we do sincerely appreciate your time today and for sharing your thoughts with us here at Indus News. Let's move on with the news for the moment. 15 Afghan security personnel have been reportedly killed by a Taliban attack in the northern Kunduz province. Provincial officials say the attack targeted a joint security force base in the district of Dasht-e-Archi. The officials said 8 soldiers and 5 policemen were also wounded in the ambush. For their part, the Taliban put the death toll at 35 and also claimed to have seized 4 soldiers. Spokesperson Zabihullah said fighters also seized a large volume of weapons and equipment. U.S. forces have recovered 2 bodies near the wreckage of the military aircraft that crashed in Afghanistan's Ghazni province. The Taliban had claimed they shot down the Bombardier E-11A used for battlefield communications on Monday. A U.S. military statement said the bodies were treated with dignity and respect by the local Afghan community. It said U.S. forces found and recovered the flight data recorder for analysis and destroyed the wreckage. The military repeated there are no indications the crash was caused by enemy fire. In other news, the UN Security Council has met at Britain's request to discuss the crisis in Yemen. In his briefing to the closed-door session, UN envoy Martin Griffiths reiterated the importance of stopping the military escalation. Griffiths warned that recent developments jeopardize the progress parties had made on de-escalation and confidence building. Diplomats said the Security Council urged parties to re-engage in the political process. The UN welcomed Houthi rebels' release of 64 children captured during military operations. Earlier in Washington, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called on all parties to exercise restraint. This came after a fresh escalation led over 100 people to be killed in renewed fighting. Now, the U.S. says 50 American soldiers now have sustained brain injuries in the Iranian attack on its troops in Iraq. Previously, the Pentagon claimed only 11 soldiers were hurt, after which it had revised the tally to 34. In a statement, the Pentagon said 31 have recovered after treatment in Iraq, while 15 were recently diagnosed. It said 18 soldiers had been sent to Germany for further evaluation and treatment, while another was sent to Kuwait. On January 8th, Tehran fired a volley of ballistic missiles at Iraq in retaliation for the killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani. After that attack, U.S. President Donald Trump said not a single U.S. soldier was harmed. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the deadly coronavirus has killed 132 people now in China. The number of people infected by that virus has jumped to nearly 10,000. All of the new deaths were reported in Hubei province, except for one in the adjoining northern province of Henan. 56 million people in China are prevented from traveling in an attempt to contain the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, the UAE has confirmed its first case of the fatal virus. Several countries, including the US, Japan, and Australia, are evacuating their citizens from Wuhan. Now, scientists in China and Australia have recreated copies of the coronavirus to develop a diagnostic test. Doctors say the copy could be used as control material for testing and will be a game changer for diagnosis. More now about the virus in this report.
As the death toll from coronavirus mounts, the public health response is picking up. Several coronaviruses known to scientists are present in animals without infecting humans. A novel coronavirus is a new strain whose image under the microscope is reminiscent of a solar corona.
The coronavirus is a group of viruses, a family of viruses. They have their big RNA viruses. They have actually some of the biggest RNA genomes of any virus. They predominantly cause respiratory disease in humans.
Scientists in Australia have become the first to recreate the new coronavirus outside China. They will share the discovery with the World Health Organization to help detect and treat the disease. Researchers in the US are also working on developing a test. It is based on the latest genomic information on the emerging virus and is expected to be ready soon.
We can ramp this up relatively quickly, as I said, in sort of weeks to about a month. And so we're ready, for these things all the time. We had to do this with Zika. We had to do this for enterovirus D68. We've had to do this with 2009 H1N1.
Chinese authorities say the virus is able to spread during the incubation period, but the WHO says it is not clear whether it is contagious before symptoms appear.
In other news, the European Parliament is set to vote on the terms of the UK's departure from the European Union today. Representatives will debate the Brexit withdrawal agreement in Brussels before giving their backing to the UK-EU treaty. The German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas says Britain will have to compromise if it wants to maintain free access to the EU's single market. Maas said London will have to show flexibility on issues like consumer rights and environmental protections. The European Parliament's approval is the final hurdle for Brexit to go ahead. The United Kingdom will then leave the bloc on Friday at 2300 GMT. Well, the European Parliament will debate India's controversial Citizenship Act today and vote on the resolution tomorrow. The law, considered anti-Muslim, has sparked mass protests, rallies and sit-ins across India for over a month. In the final draft, the EU Parliament has called the law discriminatory and dangerously divisive. The joint resolution has been put forward by 560 of Parliament's 751 MPs. Parliament has called on New Delhi to repeal the biased amendments which violate India's international obligations. The draft also says the act can target marginalized groups and create large-scale statelessness of religious minorities in India. It condemned Delhi's internet shutdown and called it a violation of the fundamental right to access information. The final resolution has been agreed upon by 6 of the largest political groups in the European Parliament. Occupied Kashmir's pro-freedom parties and organizations have warned of a possible false flag operation by Indian forces. The concern was expressed by Tehreek-e-Hurriyat Jammu and Kashmir People's League and the Young Men's League. They said the arrest of police officer Devinder Singh has exposed India's hand in violent operations in the valley. They cited the 2007 Samjhota Express blast and 2001 attack on the Indian Parliament as New Delhi's efforts to malign Pakistan and freedom fighters. The political parties highlighted the ongoing humanitarian, health crisis and economic losses in the valley. The occupied valley is reeling under an Indian lockdown and communications blackout for 178 days. In India itself, the government has released its 2020 budget plan, facing record unemployment and a jump in inflation. Different sections of society are angered at the economic slowdown, putting Prime Minister Narendra Modi under considerable pressure. Watch this report now about India's stuttering economy.
In India, the economic slowdown has made the already difficult lives even more precarious. Every morning, hundreds of workers wait at crowded Mumbai junction hoping to be picked up for domestic jobs. From masonry to cleaning sewage pipes. People protest that even the staple food has now become a luxury.
Work doesn't fetch as much money and the expenses are only increasing. The price of vegetables has exceptionally increased. Everything is expensive.
Many fear the new plan of the country's budgets will further widen the wealth gap between the upper and lower classes.
We have to think twice before buying anything. We have to think about whether to cook with 1 onion or 2 onions. We can't afford it.
Ranu Bogal, who runs an NGO against inequality in India, said a domestic worker works for a year to earn the same amount that a tech company CEO earns in 10 minutes.
Average income of a household in this country, which is from the periodic labor force surveys, is around 10,000 rupees per month. And given the state of the economy, the way inflation has been hitting people, food inflation particularly is an all-time high now.
The growing number of infuriated unemployed millennials are now looking at the government for job prospects.
9 people have died and 41 others have been injured after a bus fell off a bridge in India's eastern Odisha state. Police said the accident took place in the Ganjam district. They said the bus was on its way to Berhampur city from the town of Tikri. The injured have been shifted to Berhampur and Digapahandi hospitals. Bangladesh says it will allow Rohingya children living at a refugee camp in Cox's Bazar to access formal education. The children were previously excluded from the formal curriculum, only receiving primary education in temporary learning centers. In an interview, the Foreign Minister, A.K. Abdul Momin, said Dhaka does not want a lost generation of Rohingya Muslims. He said Rohingya children will follow the Myanmar curriculum. The decision came after a meeting of a government task force. Elsewhere, Hong Kong police are looking for 300 anti-government protesters and suspects believed to be behind a series of violent crimes. The Organized Crime and Triad Bureau says offenses include possession of firearms and explosives. It denies making arbitrary arrests. The Bureau is handling serious cases from over 7 months of protests sparked by a now withdrawn extradition bill. The deputy head of the Bureau, Steve Lee Kwawe, says identifying the suspects is challenging and time-consuming. Over 7,000 people have been arrested since the protest began, the youngest aged 11. Australia's bushfires have now spread to the capital, Canberra. An 8,000-hectare fire is now burning in the Namadgi National Park, with predicted weekday high temperatures set to intensify the blaze. The fire was accidentally sparked in the rugged mountainous area south of Canberra by a military helicopter. The heat from the aircraft landing light in already hot and dry conditions was all that was needed to set the fire. Government officials say there is no immediate threat to homes in Canberra, but the fire service has warned the blaze could pose a threat to every life in its path. Since September, bushfires have killed at least 33 people and more than 1 billion animals. In Peru, authorities have deported over 100 Venezuelan nationals with criminal records. In a statement, the Interior Minister Carlos Moran said 41 women were among the deportees. He said some were involved in drug trafficking, homicide, and extortion. Earlier this month, Peruvian authorities raided a hotel in Lima where they detained over 100 Venezuelans, seizing guns and drugs. Venezuela's political and economic crisis has forced millions of people to leave the country. In Brazil, a university student has invented a cheaper way to make electricity. The student's new method uses just paper, graphite, and steam.
This is 22-year-old Kerry Moreira demonstrating the new technique she has developed to generate electricity at the Santa Maria Federal University. She joins together 20 pieces of square paper painted with graphite, which she then uses to power up 60 LED bulbs. Energy is produced by water molecules present in the air. This is then captured with the graphite-laced paper piled together. From that, electricity flows.
The energy that is captured in the device does not involve any electrochemical. It is to do with the ions that are present in the atmosphere. So that's another reason why this battery is sustainable and ecologically sound.
The mechanics behind the invention are powerfully simple. The accessibility of the materials and their low price could have a major impact on electricity generation for poorer communities around the world.
Today, with the development of Kelly's research, in her master's, we got enough energy to power 50-60 LEDs every 10 seconds. It's considerable amount of energy that is free. It would help people get access to low-cost lighting.
Although still in its initial stages, Moreira hopes the idea behind her invention could be magnified for homes.
The Pakistani government is organizing a two-day conference in Kenya in a major trade outreach to Africa. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has reached Nairobi to attend the Pakistan-Africa Trade Development Conference being held on Thursday and Friday. In a statement, the Foreign Office said the Commerce and Foreign Ministries are hosting the conference that will strengthen economic ties between the two countries. It said Kenyan cabinet members, dignitaries from other African states, and Pakistani envoys in Africa will attend the conference. It said the move is part of Pakistan's Engage Africa initiative to forge closer ties with the African continent. European markets are trading cautiously higher as investors in the region look to brush off concerns over the spread of the deadly coronavirus. London's FTSE 100 gained fractionally, while Germany's DAX and Australia's CAC also rose marginally. The pan-European stock 600 climbed close to 0.5%. Spain's IBEX outperformed regional bourses, lifted by a 2% rise in Santander after it posted a higher quarterly net profit. This stabilization in European markets follows a rebound in U.S. stocks last night after the market's biggest sell-off in more than 3 months. But in Asia, shares in Hong Kong plummeted as markets returned from the Lunar New Year holiday amid coronavirus fears. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. You're all caught up. Thank you for watching this bulletin. You're on Indus.